In the previous episode, we talked about two realities inside China revealed by the US-Iran conflict. Today, we're going to discuss why this war was almost inevitable, because on the surface, this war appears to be about Iran. But in reality, the United States is defending something far more fundamental, the anchor of the US dollar and the foundation of the global dollar system. To put it simply, the United States is not fighting only for influence in the Middle East. It is fighting for the dollar and the global energy settlement system, the real anchor of the dollar. Everyone knows that the US dollar is the world's core currency today. Historically, the dollar was originally anchored to gold. But after the Bretton Woods system collapsed, the dollar was no longer tied to gold. Once that link disappeared, the dollar needed a new anchor to support its global credibility. That anchor eventually became oil and the global energy settlement system. In other words, when the world's most important energy transactions are primarily settled in US dollars, the dollar is no longer just America's currency. It becomes the basic tool of global energy circulation. And as long as global energy demand exists, demand for the dollar will exist. If demand for the dollar exists, the US Treasury system has support. If the Treasury system has support, then the entire American financial and fiscal structure can continue to operate. So the real foundation of the dollar is not just the US economy itself, it is the unique role of the dollar within the global energy system. The system is being challenged, and this is where the real problem begins. Countries such as Iran, Russia, and Venezuela, together with the Chinese government, have begun to challenge this system. In recent years, the system has started to be gradually eroded. Why? Because countries that were sanctioned and excluded from the mainstream financial system began searching for alternative ways to trade energy. Russia did it, Iran did it, Venezuela did it. And in this process, China has played a crucial role. What China has essentially done over the past several years is this. Using its position as the world's second largest economy and a central hub of global supply chains, it has tried to build alternative energy settlement channels that bypass the dollar and the Western financial system. Put it simply, when other countries were kicked out of the mainstream system, China stepped in and said, "Fine, I'll buy the energy." And not necessarily in dollars. It can be purchased through RMB settlement systems, offshore clearing mechanisms, or other alternative channels. What does that mean? It means energy that once had to be settled in dollars can now be traded outside the dollar system. If this trend expands, the exclusivity, necessity, and dominance of the dollar in global energy trade will gradually weaken. For many countries, this might simply look like a shift in financial structures. But for the United States, this touches the very foundation of its national power. Why Iran becomes a strategic target? So why must the United States deal with Iran? Because Iran is not just a regional adversary. It is also a critical breach point in the dollar-based energy system. The same applies to Venezuela, the same applies to Russia. But China is simply too large, too complex, and too deeply integrated into the global economy to confront directly in the short term. So the more realistic strategy for the United States is to address the outer layers first. First weaken the Venezuela model, then weaken the Iran model, then gradually compress the Russian model. These actions are not isolated events. They are part of a connected strategic logic. Why the war may not end quickly? And this leads to another question. Why might this conflict not end quickly? There is one key point to understand. If the United States attacked Iran only for retaliation or deterrence, striking several targets and then stopping, the conflict could end quickly. But if the real objective is to reshape Iran's position within the global energy system, then this will not be resolved easily. Because as long as Iran remains firmly on an anti-American trajectory, as long as it continues to provide a real example of energy exports outside the dollar system, as long as it continues to supply China with discounted energy that bypasses sanctions, the United States will never truly feel secure. Under this logic, the goal of the war is not simply about how many facilities are destroyed or how many people are killed. The deeper objective is whether Iran can eventually be brought back into a controllable order, an order that is pro-Western, or at least not openly hostile to the United States. That is the deeper strategic goal. Follow me. In the next episode, we will discuss what this war may ultimately mean for China.